let's start with this. We started with, actually, no, I want somebody to tell us how, the first two sessions, where were we? What did you get out of that? And where are we now?
Well, I think that we kind of decided or figured that what we wanted from this was to learn how to communicate more effectively and efficiently. And then we got some things to think about when we do speak, like having a theme and having a common experience with your audience and appealing to some emotion and having a message and speaking with passion when you do speak.
I learned that you have to repeat your idea a few times within what you're saying, because people don't really retain everything, but they will retain the repeated message.
Thank you, Kirsten. I like that. Absolutely. They will retain the repeated message. What else? What else did we talk about? So theme, we talked about connection and credibility. Remember, we talked about 3 things that every story has, because that's what we're about to pick up on now. The 3 things that every story has are what?
Theme, emotion, and common experience.
Okay. Say those again, please.
Theme.
Emotion, and common
and
experience. That's that credibility and connection. The theme we talked about, that focused, where are we going with this? What's the thread that kind of brings it all together? What's the focus? That's one. Because remember, we talked about a lot of people, it's not so much a speaking problem that they have a messaging problem. They're not clear on what they want to say. Secondly, the emotion, that passion, that feeling. And of course, there's many more emotions than one. I mean, I generally try to stick with the emotion of hope and, exhilaration, and you can be great and all of that. But there's a range of emotions that you can tap into. And remember, we said that the most effective speakers understand that really what they're speaking to is not the intellect. They're not speaking to the mind. They're not speaking to this rational sense, really, even of who we are. It's that deeper, piece. And it's that piece that emotion connects with. You make a decision even in your everyday life, and you may rationally know that may not be the best move, but emotionally, you move forward because of the emotion. And then lastly, very key, common experience. The gift of a good storyteller is to tell the story in a way that I see myself in it. Even if you don't articulate clearly how it relates to me, if you tell the story well enough, I see myself in it. Not to be political here, but I think this is a good point to do it, because yes, we are over here celebrating that our country is turning a new chapter. But side note, but you take Kamala Harris, right? And her political thinking aside, but this whole sense of I was that little girl. So all these memes that are going around the country and all of that, it's a sense of every little girl seeing themselves in her. It's not them, and I want you to get this. It's not the speaker. The speakers that get stuck on themselves and get stuck on their story just for telling their story miss the point that people are listening for what's in it for them. And once you hit that, that's when people start listening. So remember, even we talked about, I can't remember who made the question, asked the question about, well, how general can common experience be? And remember, I explained the book that I wrote, for instance, Come Back Swinging, focuses on getting up from failure, particularly from legal situations, as well as childhood, struggles. But it can also be articulated to say just getting up from failure generally. So even if you cannot relate to those specific ways that adversity in my life is manifested, you can relate to the overarching experience of adversity. Everybody relates to adversity. Everybody relates to love loss. Everybody relates to, a hero coming home. Everybody relates to mourning. Everybody relates to happiness. And so the most effective speakers are able to couch their message in those terms such that 20 people who have different life stories can still hear your one story and see themselves in it. That's the gift. That's the magic there. Somebody once said to me, well, if it's 10 people in the room, each of them might hear something different. They will hear something different. But that's the real gift of public speaking. How do you speak in a way that 10 people left and they all heard the core thing, but they all heard it slightly different in a way that it relates to them? That's really because what we're going to do over now and the next session is shift from generally how speaking manifests, because today we're going to focus all on that. I want to show you some clips. I'm going to show you some entertainers. I'm going to show you, both like sports. I want to show you some comedians, and I also want to show you the typical way of speaking, because I want you to see how this thread of communication goes throughout. The same way that a gifted singer performs, and I'm going to show you this, is the same, some of the same techniques is how a lawyer is using in a courtroom, is how a preacher is using in a church, is how a politician is using across the podium, is how someone will use in a boardroom. So I want to start with general. Today, we're going to look at some things that effective speakers and communicators do across the board. And then we're going to begin to, after this, I want to devote each session to a specific core area. So I know I want us to do one on just persuasive speaking. So that's going to be a whole session. I know I want us to do one on this sort of negotiating interpersonal skills discovery. So that's going to be a whole session. I know I want us to do one on, what's the other one? I think it was corporate presenting. I have to look at the four. So it's four core areas, and we're going to go through all four. All right. So we're going from general to specific. I'm going to tell you why this helped me so much. I told you all that I started speaking. It's hard to say when I started speaking professionally. It's hard to say that because the gift of speaking is just something that has been with me. So even as a kid, when I wasn't getting paid, so to speak, to do it, I was doing student government and different things. And I did that through middle school. I did that through high school. I did that through college. And it wasn't until actually once I left law school that I went to a conference in Florida called the National Speakers Association. It really changed my life. I went in 2010. It's the only conference I've ever been to that I've paid more than $1,000 to go to. So it should have changed my life. And the second thing is that I had never been to a conference for speaking because, and this is sometimes what happens, and I don't want to digress here, but hear where I'm going. Sometimes when people have a gift, they lean on just the gift and never cultivate it. And there's some level of success that you're going to have just in your gifting. You have some people, they're great singers, or good singers. They were born with that capacity to be great, but they're born with the gift and they do it well. They never took a singing class. So until they cultivate it, though, it's never really taken to the next level. So I'm saying that to say it wasn't until 2010 that I started intentionally thinking of speaking as a business. And I went to this conference to learn how to be a more effective speaker. I got out of just being like, well, I'm gifted with words. I can get up there and do it. And started really seeing what are the ways and intentional things that people are doing to be more effective communicators. That's partly what I'm sharing with you throughout this webinar. Throughout the 7 sessions. But particularly this one session, I want to condense several of the things that I learned, because what amazed me about that conference was I was expecting to go to a conference and hear a bunch of people talk about how to give a better speech. But that really wasn't what I learned. I learned there how to relate to audiences with a message. And in that conference, we were learning how great singers do the same thing that great speakers do. I never thought of it that way. I'm like, how is a singer I remember one of the sessions, we were just learning show business and they're teaching us about things that Jerry Seinfeld taught them about stand-up comedy. And I'm thinking, why am I learning about stand-up comedy? And this is a speakers conference, but we're learning about the transferability. That's what this session is about here, this third session with us. I want you to see the transferability, and I want you really over the rest of your life, but over the next few weeks as we're together, as I'm telling you these things, to begin to look at how other people are using this gift of communication in their lane and how you can use it where you are. Okay, so do y'all see where we're going with this?
Yep.
Okay. Any questions before I get on the train?
Nope, hop on the train.
Okay, hop on the train.
Go right ahead.
All right, so because I have plenty of notes, so let me see how I want us to. I want to start with discovery, and then I'm gonna go to technique. So let's start with discovery. So what is discovery? Discovery is a term that it gets used a lot. Now, in the legal sense, what does discovery mean in a legal sense? I know it's a lot of y'all legal backgrounds here. I know it has a term. I know it has a meaning in America. I'm not sure if overseas it has the same meaning. Is discovery a legal term there?
I think it would be disclosure, but I don't think we use the term discovery. But I'm not sure as well, because I'm not in practice yet.
Okay, got it. So disclosure, same thing. And disclosure would be, if someone says disclosure, what do you think of?
Like when you need to make all documents available in order for them to find like the information that they need for their case, but the other party holds it. So like in South Africa, we have like PIA, which is Promotion of Information to Access, Promotion of Access to Information Act, where you make an actual formal request and then you get the information that you need from that party or from that government official or whatever.
Okay, so let's take that definition. This is a legal definition of you're filing paperwork as an attorney to get an understanding of documents or information before a case is filed. So let's make this a bigger analogy. Why does the attorney do discovery? Let me ask that. Why? I mean, if I'm a great speaker and I'm an eloquent and gifted orator, why the heck do I need discovery?
They need information so that they can frame their argument in the correct way that reaches the audience, that answers the question that needs to be answered.
So it seems to me that you are suggesting I can be a great speaker, but still not hit the message.
You need facts.
Yeah,
you need to speak on facts.
Well, we would hope you're speaking on facts, certainly, but you definitely need to speak in a way that's relevant to the circumstance. You wouldn't think of a lawyer getting up, a good lawyer, and not doing some sort of discovery. But how oftentimes do we do speaking and there's no discovery? That's where I really want to start, because most public speaking communications classes spend so much time telling you how to talk that they spend very little time telling you how to listen. And I don't mean in a cliche way, oh, you have two ears. I remember they told me that when I was a kid. You have two ears and one mouth. They told me that meant that was God's way of saying that I'm supposed to listen twice as much. I said I thought I was supposed to talk twice as much to catch up with the fact that but whatever. So the point is, how do we actively listen so we know what it is that we need to say? That's the first thing that I want to talk about. Because I believe, now I might be wrong, Rahima, was it you that was telling me, okay, you were the one that was telling me about how you did the speech, right? About 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And remember we were talking about, okay, how do you prepare? What do you, because you whether you are tapped to give a speech or you're an attorney that's fighting for your client, or it's a business presentation, you always find yourself wondering, what do I need to say? The most effective communicators really focus on that. It took me a while to get there. I'm going to tell you this because people that are naturally gifted with communication are more likely to lean on that than preparation. And I think the key is if you have the gift, you have the gift, but some people don't, but you can learn some of the skills. The key is preparation, thinking, and discovery, learning. The more you can tell me about me, the more I'm likely to listen. So that's key. Well, how do you do discovery? Well, actually, let me talk about discovery in 3 different ways. So I had thought of discovery really in 3 different. First is, I'm going to say discovery of self. And discovery of self, what does that mean? I don't mean that in a theoretical sense of, who am I? But like, really, what am I trying to get across at this moment with this message? That's what I mean in a very targeted sense. Ask yourself that intentionally. Before you do, what am I trying to get across? So today with us, I knew what I wanted to get across was I wanted to share as many principles as I learned from that speaking conference in 2010, specifically for this session. Now, the overall arching sense of this 7 weeks of us together is that I want to help you be a more effective speaker. But having the goal in my mind is going to help me know more clearly what I want to relay. So what am I really trying to say? What is it that I'm really trying to get across? So we're talking discovery of self. So that real discovery piece on my end. Secondly, discovery of the subject. How do I establish that I have knowledge on what it is that I'm talking about? So you have some people greatly passionate, but it's clear they don't know what the heck they're talking about. Have you ever been, I don't want to say have you ever, because of course we all have, but we can all think of times, right, where you've been and you've heard somebody say something and it's like you knew that the heart was in it, but they, almost like an interview. I've seen interviews where I've worked with people and they're pretty good with interviewing on their, like they're just good with schmoozing. But because they don't take the time to learn about the job, they don't take the time to read the company report, they don't take the time to learn about maybe some of the things that they might want to know, they waltz in there on a nice resume, good speaking skills, and it's clear that they have not done the work that shows that they're knowledgeable about the subject. So the first thing is I want to discover obviously about myself or what do I want to say, but then also I want to be very intentional. What is the subject matter? And I want to show that I have depth there. Just last night, I was really just preparing for this. I was reading again about techniques for great storytelling. And this isn't the first time I've heard of some of it. Some of the things I was reading, I was like, I never thought of that. But I always want to be sharper and sharper. Of course, I could be doing even more. But I would encourage you to learn about it. I've made many mistakes because I've gone into a situation where I wasn't really clear of what was happening there. Last thing go ahead.
Can I just interject? Sorry, I'm going to have to leave soon, but I just wanted to ask, in an instance where, say you tried to learn the subject matter, but you didn't get the point, right? And you missed the mark and people picked it up. Then how do you recover from that? If you could just discuss that. You don't have to do it right now, but just before I leave, I just want to pose that question so you can get back to it whenever, or even just send us an email back. But like once you just missed the mark and now everybody is like, audience is like, what's going on? How do you recover from that?
That's a great question. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a law school tactical on you really quick. I know you have to go. I'm going to give you my thoughts, but what do you think the answer to that is?
I honestly don't. I think I would just be stuck in that moment. I wouldn't be able to say anything.
Well, don't be stuck. And I'm going to tell you why don't be stuck. It happens to everybody. I don't care who you are. It happens to everybody. So don't be stuck. This is what you do. It's a good question. Authenticity is key. Remember we've been talking before about pay attention to how you feel, and because that's what's going to come across. Remember we talked about that? the first time, session
Yeah.
one. I think if you're in a situation, and I've been there before, I've just bumbled or something. Wait a minute. What did I just say? Hold up. Let me get back to y'all on that, because I had a long night. Sometimes just calling it what it is. I think the worst thing you can do is when you're already screwing up and everybody knows it, is to keep on in that vein.
Yeah, I agree.
That's the worst thing you can do. So it happens. Sometimes just acknowledging it, maybe just say, look, I was distracted or whatever. And sometimes it's very easy. If you don't know, and sometimes it's where people make their mistake. And forgive me, I don't want to gender stereotype here. I think men do this more than women. Will answer a question, you don't know the answer. They know you don't know the answer, but you still try to do it. Don't do it. Just, you know what? I'm going to get that answer. I've been in situations where I've asked, I never thought of that. You know what? Give me a day and I'm going to get back with you. I think people respect that more than I'm just going to try to make something up.
They see you as human.
And if the situation is such that there is no time to get back?
To repair?
Like say you were in the speech at that time and you only had that audience for that moment.
That is the moment. You stay in the moment. That's the point I'm trying to make. I think you always have moments, because I'll give you an instance of one guy. This is one of the most embarrassing things I ever heard. Do y'all know the sheet covers that go on top of reports, the like little clear sheet covers? All right. So I know someone, valedictorian of their college, get up to speak. They had the sheet cover over their speech. Somehow in the middle of when they were speaking, the lights panned, the glare hit that sheet protector, totally lost his space. You know what he did? He waited for 2 seconds, realized there was no way he's going to find it. He looked up and said, guys, I don't even know where I am in the speech. Everybody bust out laughing. And he moved on. And he just talked. I think look, that's a moment of, that was his moment. Now, he could have kept bumbling along. He said, I knew in that split second. And it was nerves. He just didn't know where he was in the speech. He didn't know where. And so I think people appreciate authenticity. Remember that. Remember that. Remember that. And even if we've been in situations before, I've been in situations where, I'll give you an instance. The first week, I think I told a joke here about the obscene call. Remember, I talked about being on the call and the call was 2 hours long. Y'all don't remember the joke? I made a joke where the woman calls the police and said it was an obscene phone call. And the police said, well, why were you on the phone? How long did the phone call last? And the woman said 2 hours.
And so said, why didn't you put down? Yeah.
Yes. Why didn't you put it down? And I came back and said, because the point I was trying to make with that message was, when people are listening, even if it's for a long time, they're listening for a reason. Even if they say no and it's something to it. But I didn't close that loop. So if you go back, and when this is all over, I'm going to send the recordings to y'all so y'all see anyway. Because I critique myself. Even in that moment, if you caught it during that class, I later said, that joke, I kind of lost myself, but this is what I was trying to say. Now, y'all may not have caught it. When you see the recording, you'll see it later. But I just think those moments of, this is what it is, it's better. It's nothing like seeing somebody forge ahead and you don't know, especially when it's something that you can't really fake. It's different when maybe they ask you a question, what's the secret to happiness? You might be able to bumble that away. And I see you, Raheem, is shaking your head. We've all been asked questions where it's a yes or no, or it's a clear answer. Like I had someone who was asked in an interview, what's the steps to to waxing a floor? Show me everything that, step one, using this sophisticated machine, what do you do? And he told me, I knew I lied on the resume and I didn't know what I was doing. And I told him, why did you make it? And it was clear. If you didn't do this before in life, how are you going to make that up? He said the first step, when he looked back on Google, he realized the very first step I told the man was wrong. And I said, he sat there probably listening to you the whole time in his mind saying, and this dimwit, so I think just showing your cards, being vulnerable and authentic. All right.
If you don't, it undermines your credibility. So if you're losing the plot and you carry on, people start raising their eyebrow and thinking, what is this, like as you said, this dimwit? I mean, what is this fool speaking about? And they lose interest in you as a credible person. Whereas if you just show your fragility and open up honestly and say, guys, I've lost it. They appreciate that human aspect and that honesty, I guess. You said the word authenticity and
that's what you're
yeah.
Vulnerability. And we're going to get to that. Remember we talked about emotion. Remember that clip that I showed you with the singers and they were singing with their, with all of that emotion. Yeah. And remember P. Diddy said, you got to get naked. But that's what he's talking about, what you're saying, Lishay. What he's saying is vulnerability. People like that. People like you get up. I am so freaking nervous right now. I didn't know what I was going to do this morning. It just disarms, and it actually disarms you too, because you realize they might be just as nervous. I've been nervous to watch somebody speak before. And we've all been in that situation, especially if it's a loved one or someone you care about. So you realize you're really not alone up there. And what you're doing in those vulnerable moments is actually creating common experience aside from whatever story you're going to tell. Because we can all relate to that. Oh gosh, I know what it's like to get up in those jitters, So last discovery slice. Discovery of self, so what do I want to say? Discovery the subject. And then lastly, discovery of the target. This goes, I could do a whole session on this, I won't. This goes from trying to learn about the people themselves that you're going to be speaking to. And maybe you don't know about the people, but the type of people, what the need is. This is why you ask questions whenever you're asked to speak. Well, what do you want me to say? What do you think they want to hear? Why do you think people are coming? 3 questions, write that down. What do you want me to say as the organizer? What do you think they should hear? So 1, what do you think I should say? Thanks, Kirsten, I appreciate it. So hope to see you next week. All right.
Bye, everyone.
See you.
Bye, Kirsten.
What's that last one that I said?
What do you want me to say?
What do you want me to say?
Hear? What do they want to hear?
What do they want to hear? And why do you think they're coming? It's sometimes what we're doing. Remember, we're talking about discovery. It's exactly what it sounds like. I'm just trying to uncover needs. This has been pivotal to me because I have found, I can't tell you how important this is, just those 3 questions. Depending on how they answer the questions, that might even let you know what type of situation you're going to walk into. Listen to the 3 questions again. What do you want me to say? What should they hear? Why do you think they're coming? If the 3 answers are pretty aligned, then you might be walking into something that they know what they're sending you into. Sometimes you get these answers where that lets you know just from that conversation, they're not even clear. So let's say it's someone that says, we love your story. It's a big conference that we have, and we've got, a $2,000 budget, want to have you come and speak and inspire the people. Okay, so this is my questions. What's question number 1?
What do you want me to say?
Yeah, what do you want me to say? They say, well, I've had people would say that. So in my case, I was, I don't know, that you can be anything. You're from Baltimore, right? And you said you went to Harvard and you people need to hear that story. Okay, all right, okay. So what do you think they want to hear? A lot of these kids, or maybe it's kids, a lot of these people they're dealing with hopelessness or sadness. So it's like, okay, so we're kind of aligned. But then I've dealt with where someone will say, oh, I think they want to hear your, maybe the personal story. Well, why do you think they came? Well, honestly, they're coming just because they're getting paid $20 a stipend in order to do these sessions. I see you smile. So that lets me know, okay, and it doesn't mean that I won't land with the session, but let me know. Let me know if the people that I'm speaking to are being held hostage or whether or not they want to be there. I mean, that makes a difference. That lets me know how I need to proceed. And knowing those things is going to help you prepare. I don't want to just leave it at, they want to hear my story, or they want to be inspired, or they want to be informed. No, because I want you to get a little more specific, because the more specific the more that I talk to them, I make a point, I try to always have a talk with the conference organizer, whoever that person is before. But that's freelance speaking, I get it. Let's say we're talking about any type. Remember I told you about, so I said discovery of target, all the way from discovering the people to if you can even go to the venue. So I don't want to get ahead of myself, but let's say you're preparing for something. If you can go to the venue before to look at it, go. I would do those things. When I would go to conferences, especially if they were, traveling, couldn't go before, right? So I'm there. I would say, look, can you open the hall to, an hour or two before? Let me go in and see. Let me see what the podium's like. Those things make a difference. As gifted as a speaker as I think I am, I get excited, my hands shake. It's not so much of nervousness, I just get excited. So I know I want to not have a handheld mic if possible. So these are little things that I want to know, because partly the reason why people get very anxious about speaking is that they don't have an understanding of the factors they're walking into. There are always going to be some X factors. I've always seen it. There's always some factors where you walk in and it's like, I remember the one time I gave a speech at, it was the first time I ever gave a speech in a basketball arena. Look, it sounds better than what it was. It was not thousands of people there, but there were hundreds. There were hundreds, it wasn't thousands, but this is what was interesting. I forget the date, but when I tell you the day, you'll remember it. It was in 2009, June. And I remember as I'm preparing, huge speech, I'm in the hotel. My best friend calls me and he says, "Are you watching CNN?" I'm like, "No, I'm not." Usually I don't even pick up a phone before a speech like that because I don't want to be. He says, they're reporting Michael Jackson died. I said, "What? Huh? What do you mean?" So I turn on CNN, Michael Jackson died. It was the day Michael Jackson died. So, I'm sort of I'm watching this, I'm getting ready. So I'm giving you an X factor because we get to the venue. Now, this is 2009. This is before what technology is now. This wouldn't have played out this way now because everybody would have known. But we get to the speech. Because of the way that it's an arena, but it's a conference where everybody's segregated segregated is a bad word, but separated. And so nobody knew. So I did make the speech. After the speech, people clapping and all that, the leader of the conference stands up and says, "I have something I need to say to everyone. Michael Jackson has just been declared dead." I didn't hear this. I'm talking to other people. All I hear was people saying to me, yelling, "He's laughing." I was smiling to someone next to me, complimenting me on the speech. At the same time, the announcement came across that Michael Jackson died. So of course, the shot of me on this big screen is me looking like I'm rejoicing about this, which is of course not the case. I know, but I'm just giving you an instance of how there are certain things that you can't control. And I bring that up to say too, I believe that had that happened in 2020, everybody would have known before I walked out there. And that would have been a different dynamic. Obviously my speech had nothing to do with any of that. So I'm just giving an example of even with all the preparation, even with all of let me go to the venue, even with all of those things, something like that means that now you would kind of need to pivot, right? How you want to address it, or if you want to address it, So I'm just giving an example there. But I've been in many, I can give you story after story after story of where I've been in a venue or a situation and things just kind of popped up. But most of what I've learned along the way is if you can know as much about what's about to happen, you can prepare. So that's discovery. Before we get into tips, let me stop there for a second. How are you feeling about, and before I start, let me wrap it with this last thing. When we're talking about discovery, whether the subject, the target, yourself, what's the need? That's what we're getting at. when you get up to speak, whether you're speaking as an attorney, you're speaking as an advocate, you're speaking in a boardroom, you're person negotiating for a better deal on that blouse that's, you know, in the window of your favorite store. What's the need? And not even to be facetious, take that, something as simple as that. I've gotten better deals on clothes because I know fall's coming. I know you want to move this. That's the need. They may not admit it, but their need is they want to move that. They're not going to tell you that. So let's come to a price. You see what I mean? When I can get to the need, just like I came to the need of that suit that I saw and I realized that suit's been there for a month and you want to take that off the mannequin and that's your last one. That's the same way that I want to approach a speech. What's the need? Is it hopelessness I'm speaking to? Is it hurt? Maybe it's just an informative speech. Maybe it's just that. And so even take that. Maybe I've been told, oh, they want you to come in and teach them. This has happened to me many times. Better strategies to get into graduate school. But you recognize what they need is not just inspiration, but empowerment. Not just information, but inspiration. I'm talking to people, in some cases, I've dealt with this, they don't even believe they can be great. They don't even believe that they can. So I can sit here all day. I understand that you've hired me because this is where it goes to, when I understand your need, if I can hit your need, even if I didn't get your want, you'll always remember me and you'll bring me back. So let's go back to the instance. I remember an instance where the person said, we want to have you come in to do a seminar on how these college grads can get into graduate school. I immediately recognized I could sit here and do all these slides on information. When I walked in the room, felt the heaviness, one. Two, started listening as people talk, I realized it wasn't intellect that was lacking here. It wasn't strategies for success. People didn't feel that they could do it. They had never seen somebody go to grad school. So I immediately switched to being less about, you need to take this test and you need to do this, to really speak into that fear that some of them I knew had, that I can't be it and I can't do it. So when we walked away from the session, it was 40 minutes where I really didn't give them what the conference organizer asked them, which was what? An informational session. I gave them much more of the inspiration and this is my story and this is how I did it. And at the end of the day, what do you think the conference organizer said?
Well, one of two things. He either said you went completely off topic, or he said, well done for establishing what their need was and you've inspired them.
And it's the second one. I didn't go in there and talk about frogs and cats. That's where you really go off. I'm hitting the need. Because what I recognized was his need, even though he didn't articulate it, was he was bringing me in to speak to them because he wanted to see them get to grad school. So why is it going to help me to give you something? And once I recognize that you're trying to get them to grad school, let me help you get them there. You might have some people that come and say, we just want you to motivate them, or we just want you to do that. Once you recognize that, hey, now I have a better sense of, okay, how do I get there? So I'm not telling you to take complete liberty and just do whatever the heck you want. What I'm saying is, once you have a better sense of need, take it with any great professional when you go to, right? Any great professional you go to, you have a vision. If they're really good, they'll come back to you and say, I noticed what you said, but I noticed what you wanted. Now you might look back still and say, thank you for what you did, but I really wanted it the other way. And hey, they go back and change it. But the real good ones know you hired them for their expertise. They're hiring you, they're bringing you in because you know how to make the message land. That's how I want you to think about it. Don't rely on them to tell you what to say. Rely on them to just give you information as to the setting. But within you is, how do I move this audience? And the more that I know about the subject, about the target, about myself, the more, and when I say myself, what am I trying to do? The more I'm going to be able to hit that. Okay. Questions, comments? I know that's kind of a lot.
So is that the fundamental thing, or is that the crux of it really? Is it always going to come to that need, or discovering what that need is?
It's the foundation. That's why I want to, before we get into core area specific things, that's the foundation. If I could get you to be an active listener and to understand their need, you'll hit it every time. Remember, I went back to the person, and now I smile when I get these calls because I think of y'all, because I told y'all that this happens. The people that call me about the car insurance. And I said, well, I don't have an automobile, right? So you can be eloquent. You're probably not going to sell me that because that's not my need. Yes, eloquence is important, but I don't want to start there. I want to start with the need, because if I can speak to that need, if I can speak clearly to that, and like I said, that goes on a big level, the big speech, that goes on the medium level. I'm in the courtroom advocating for my client, and that goes on a very small level. That goes all the way down to I'm in the market, because I'm always looking for a deal. I'm in the market. Oh yeah, this is me. I know this is me. I'm about to throw this meat out. I'm not going to eat something I know is completely bad, but this is the end of the night. So what's this price now? So, but because your need is to get rid of it. So when you start to get, that's the foundation. Get to the need. When you start speaking the needs, I had a mentor that taught me this. He said, people will tell you what they want, but they won't tell you what they need because that'll make them feel vulnerable. But if you hit their need, that's what it is. People won't come and say, I'm fearful and I'm scared about what COVID's going to do to my business, and I need somebody to talk me out of a hole. But what they will say is, I need strategies for how to shift my business in COVID. I need to know, maybe I'll bring you in to help me, level up my business during this time when we don't know, working from home and all of that. And once you recognize that the real fear is that they don't even know if they're going to have a business in 6 months. That's what you got to speak to. They don't even know if they're going to make it in a year from now.
So are there any strategies, Darrell, that you can use to establish that need and be accurate with it? So are there questions that you can ask yourself, like to be able to recognize that need? Because you can know what people want, or you have an organizer that tells you, I want you to speak on that.
That's a good question. You know what? Hold that for the next session, because that's when we do the next one on negotiating and influencing. Okay. We're going to really focus on asking those questions. But I'll answer it in this way. Being curious and listening and asking questions is the key. Listen to what people are telling you. People will tell you. People really will tell you. A lot of times we miss it. People will tell you. But you're right. That kind of, and that's a great question. How you ask. Remember, now I already gave you 3 questions. And even though I couch those in terms of a conference organizer or someone for a freelance speech, that's period. When you just start to ask, well, what are you looking for? This is what I've learned to do in meetings. Well, what made you take the meeting? Just that. You might be surprised. You may have thought they took it for one reason, and now it told you something totally different. Now that gives you some insight. Just those small things. Because when you ask the question, now, you see what I mean? It's opening the door for me to get an insight into what you're thinking. All right, so oh my gosh. I'm looking at the clock, so much to do, so little time. I want to show you some clips, and then I want to switch to some strategies on delivery. So we're going from discovery to delivery. All right, so let's get to it. All right, so what's the first one I want to show you? Okay, let's start here. Let me know if you can see this. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
But nothing's happening.
No sound.
No sound, no play.
Oh yeah, but it is. I just want to make sure you can see it first before I start. You can see it?
Yes.
Okay, yes. All right, we're gonna watch 5 minutes of this.
the wisest person I ever met in my life, a third grade dropout. Wisest and dropout in the same sentence is rather oxymoronic, like jumbo shrimp. Like fun run, ain't nothing fun about it. Like Microsoft Works, y'all don't hear me. I used to say like country music, but I've lived in Texas so long, I love country music now. I hunt, I fish, I have cowboy boots and cowboy, y'all, I'm a black neck redneck. Do you hear what I'm saying to you? No longer oxymoronic for me to say country music. And it's not oxymoronic for me to say third grade and dropout. That third grade dropout, the wisest person I ever met in my life, who taught me to combine knowledge and wisdom to make an impact, was my father. A simple cook. Wisest man I ever met in my life. Just a simple cook. Left school in the third grade to help out on the family farm, but just because he left school doesn't mean his education stopped. Mark Twain once said, "I've never allowed my schooling to get in the way of my education." My father taught himself how to read, taught himself how to write, decided in the midst of Jim Crowism, as America was breathing the last gasp of the Civil War, my father decided he was going to stand and be a man. Not a black man, not a brown man, not a white man, but a man. He literally challenged himself to be the best that he could all the days of his life. I have 4 degrees. My brother is a judge. We're not the smartest ones in our family. It's a third grade dropout daddy. A third grade dropout daddy who was quoting Michelangelo, saying to us, "Boys, I won't have a problem if you aim high and miss, but I'm gonna have a real issue if you aim low and hit." A country mother quoting Henry Ford, saying, "If you think you can or if you think you can't, you're right." I learned that from a third grade drop. Simple lessons. Lessons like these. Son, you'd rather be an hour early than a minute late. We never knew what time it was at my house because the clocks were always ahead. My mother said for nearly 30 years, my father left the house at 3:45 in the morning. One day she asked him, "Why, Daddy?" He said, "Maybe one of my boys will catch me in the act of excellence." I want to share 2 things with you. Aristotle said, "You are what you repeatedly do." Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act. Don't ever forget that. I know you're tough, but always remember to be kind. Always. Don't ever forget that. Never embarrass mama. Yeah. If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. If daddy ain't happy, don't nobody care. But you know, I'm trying to tell you. Next lesson. Lesson from a cook over there in the galley. Son, make sure your servant's towel is bigger than your ego. Ego is the anesthesia that deadens the pain of stupidity. Y'all might have a relative in mind you want to send that to. Let me say it again. Ego is the anesthesia that deadens the pain of stupidity. Pride is the burden of a foolish person. John Wooden coached basketball at UCLA for a living, but his calling was to impact people. And with all those national championships, guess what he was found doing in the middle of the week? Going into the cupboard, grabbing a broom, and sweeping his own gym floor. You want to make an impact? Find your broom. Every day of your life, you find your broom. You grow your influence that way. That way you're attracting people so that you can impact them. Final lesson. Son, if you're going to do a job, do it right. I've always been told how average I can be. Always been criticized about being average. But I want to tell you something. I stand here before you, before all of these people, not listening to those words, but telling myself every single day to shoot for the stars, to be the best that I can be. Good enough isn't good enough if it can be better, and better isn't good enough if it can be best. Let me close with a very personal story that I think will bring all this into focus. Wisdom will come to you in the unlikeliest of sources, a lot of times through failure. When you hit rock bottom, remember this. While you're struggling, rock bottom can also be a great foundation on which to build and on which to grow. I'm not worried that you'll be successful. I'm worried that you won't fail from time to time. Person that gets up off the canvas and keeps growing, that's the person that will continue to grow their influence. Back in the 70s, to help me make this point, let me introduce you to someone. I met the finest woman I'd ever met in my life. Back in my day, we'd have called her a brick house. This woman was the finest woman I'd ever seen in my life. There's just one little problem. Back then, ladies didn't like big old linemen. The blind side hadn't come out yet. They like quarterbacks and running backs. We're at this dance, and I find out her name is Trina Williams from Lompoc, California. And we're all dancing, and we're just excited. And I decide in the middle of dancing with her that I would ask her for her phone number. Trina was the first one. Trina was the only woman in college who gave me her real telephone number. The next day, we walked to Baskin & Robbins ice cream parlor. My friends couldn't believe it. This has been 40 years ago, and my friends still can't believe it. We go on a second date, and a third date, and a fourth date. We drive from Chico to Vallejo so that she could meet my parents. My father meets her. My daddy, my hero, he meets her, pulls me to the side and says, "Is she psycho?" But anyway, we go together for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. By now, Trina's a senior in college. I'm still a freshman, but I'm working some things out. I'm so glad I graduated in 4 terms. Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan. So now it's time to propose. So I talked to her girlfriends, and it's California, it's in the 70s, so it has to be outside. You have to have a candle, and you have to have, some chocolate. Listen, I'm from the hood. I had a bottle of Boone's Farm wine. That's what I had. She said yes. That was the key. I married the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen in my life. Y'all ever been to a wedding, and even before the wedding starts, you hear this? How in the world? And it was coming from my side of the family. We get married, we have a few children, our lives are great. One day, Trina finds a lump in her left breast. Breast cancer. 6 years after that diagnosis, me and my 2 little boys walked up to mommy's casket. And for 2 years, my heart didn't beat. If it wasn't for my faith in God, I wouldn't be standing here today. If it wasn't for those 2 little boys, there would have been no reason for which to go on. I was completely lost. That was rock bottom. You know what sustained me? The wisdom of a 3rd grade dropout. The wisdom of a simple cook. We're at the casket. I'd never seen my dad cry. But this time I saw my dad cry. That was his daughter. Trina was his daughter, not his daughter-in-law. And I'm right behind my father, about to see her for the last time on this earth. And my father shared 3 words with me that changed my life right there at the casket. It would be the last lesson he would ever teach me. He said, "Son, just stand. You keep standing. You keep standing, no matter how rough the sea, you keep standing." And I'm not talking about just water. You keep standing. No matter what, you don't give up. And as clearly as I'm talking to you today, these were some of her last words to me. She looked me in the eye and she said, "It doesn't matter to me any longer how long I live. What matters to me most is how I live." I ask y'all one question, a question that I was asked all my life by a 3rd grade dropout. How you living? How you living? Every day, ask yourself that question, how you living? Here's what a cook would suggest you to live this way. That you would not judge, that you would show up early, that you'd be kind, that you'd make sure that that servant's towel is huge and used, that if you're gonna do something, you do it the right way. That cook would tell you this, that it's never wrong to do the right thing, that how you do anything is how you do everything. And in that way, you will grow your influence to make an impact. In that way, you will honor all those who have gone before you, who have invested in you. Look in those unlikeliest places for wisdom. Enhance your life every day by seeking that wisdom and asking yourself every night, how am I?
If you manage a team, you have to try Monday.
So what did y'all think about that? Hold on. What did y'all think about that?
Sure.
Wow.
Very moving.
Yeah, wow. Just brought up so many emotions.
Yeah. And I mean, it goes from elation to heartbreak, and I think that goes. It was what you were saying. Find that common ground with somebody, tell a story that they can identify with, and I mean, Rahima's going. It brings up so many emotions, and I'm saying the same. So we all identifying with love, loss, death.
Yes. Let me tell you the beauty of that. Woman, man, young, older, Black, white, American, Venezuelan, doesn't matter. If you could understand that, I mean, the only impediment may be if you don't understand English. If you understood his words, you related to it somewhere, whether it was the love lost, the love gained, the love lost. You knew what it was like to have a father or a parent, and maybe if you didn't have a parent, you thought about the one you wish you had. I mean, he reached so many themes, and I wanted to do it, but I said I'm not going to do it. You know, usually what I like to do is after 5 minutes, okay, we got to move to the next video, because you want to know how is it going to end. I mean, wasn't that such an incredible story in the sense that it made you were there. You're at the casket. You're there at the proposal. He's not telling you. So that's the first thing I want you to write down about delivery. Don't tell us. Show us. Be there. Give us that narration. My father said. My father said. My father. So let's back up for a second. The 3 words. And I see you, buddy. What's up, man? How you doing? Good to see you.
To you?
Good to see you. Good to see you. How'd the exam go?
No, it went well. Better than expected.
Good. Glad to hear. We just watched a video. We're going to watch another one at least before the end of today. But so the first thing, let's talk about theme. What was his theme?
Inspiration, standing up, surging forward.
Yeah, but I want to get more specific. What's the theme? Now, I'm glad you mentioned that. So yes, that is part of the overarching messaging. But give me a theme. Tell me something specific, because I'll tell you a theme that I saw that kept coming up.
Never quit.
Okay, that's one. Maybe, because I didn't get never quit from the beginning. That was a strong point. What was the point that he started with? Middle, it came up, and at the end, he kept going back to this thing.
His father, the 3rd grade education.
Yes. There you go. And you see, by him painting the 3rd grade education, that said a multitude of things just by that one phrase. And he kept going back there. So it started with a 3rd grade education. Remember, that was almost like the very first thing he said. 3rd grade education, but I learned the best lessons from him. And you're thinking in the beginning, these lessons are just about love and life and success. And now we followed his life long enough to see that lesson actually play a part in death and hurt and frustration. That's the thing. And subconsciously what he's weaving in is that, and people love this, that your lot in life is not tied to where you went to school, how long you went. You notice he joked about how long it took him. And he also joked about Mark Twain, which I love. I think it was Twain, he said, don't let your schooling get in the way of your education. And that's another common experience, because people like to know that you don't think less of them because maybe they don't have certain credentials. Because let me flip it to, I'm aware that if I go and speak somewhere, and I've had people read an introduction and say, oh, he was valedictorian at Morehouse, whatever, Harvard, and this and that. And that can work against you, because people now think, oh, so who does he think he is? So that common experience there was, he's actually making you feel comfortable in the fact that schooling really isn't that important, because what matters is life. That's what he's telling you. That's really what matters, because my father only had a third grade education, but everything that I needed to know in life, I learned from him. So he also makes you more, it's making him more relatable, even if you don't recognize it. It's making him seem more down to earth. He could have said my father, the investment banker. It would have had the same effect. You know, it's just those little words, because the word, remember we talked about session 1, the words are just conduits. He's using those 2 words to say something much bigger. And that's his theme. And yes, common experience, a lot of things come up. I love how he brings to the love. Even if up to the beginning, or up to that point, you don't really identify with this 300+ pound big black man talking about his life, because of course you see the optics first. Once he starts talking about the love, I would almost dare to say, you're not only thinking about him, but you're thinking about who that person is in your life that will not you out. That's what makes a good story a good story. Now you're somewhere there. All of us had a different image, I guarantee you, of what we heard him say when he got there.
What I found interesting though was that, you know, when he got to that point of describing how he'd met her and his love, and then when she got sick, it was like, it was not the experience that I was relating to. It was just the raw emotion of it. Just feeling that disappointment that he just had 6 years with her.
But that is the experience. Think about it, Rahima. That is the experience. Because you can commonly understand what it's like to experience pain.
Yeah.
That's why it was so raw to you. Because you can in your life recognize what it was like to have that. And even if that wasn't his that, which was this love of the life, but that may have been something different for you. But I'm glad you said what you said, because I would dare to tell you it's the common experience. I'm telling you, it does it every time. And that
I agree with you, but I think what kind of hit me was that, I mean, I didn't have a spouse who died of that, God forbid, but it was the emotion that connected, that I felt. And yes, it's another experience that helps me to connect to that, because like you're saying, I would have had another experience in my life that would make that moment meaningful for me. But what struck me was more really the emotion than what I'm saying.
I'm with you on that, Rahima. I feel the same, but I think what Darrell's saying as well is that the experience for you and I would be the experience of loss, the pain of loss.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of,
I get that. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm feeling like you, that I felt this total emotion.
Yeah.
But maybe not for the loss of a spouse. So I wasn't experiencing that experience, but I was experiencing the experience of raw, the pain of loss.
Yeah.
But let's go back to common experience. Common experience doesn't mean that your experience manifested the same way. That's very key. Because let me take it further. You're right. I'm not denying that there's not emotion play. Because remember, we said that emotion's not playing a part. Remember, we said the 3 things of great story: theme, emotion, common experience. But let me bring it more to you. If you didn't experience hurt, even though he's expressing it, I guarantee you it would not touch you.
Yeah.
It touches you because you recognize that feeling. It's not just that the feeling is there, and that is important, but you can relate to it. And so now when you think of the casket, I'll just be honest, I thought about my grandmother because that's the first person that died in my life that shook my world. I wasn't thinking about a romantic love. So he says casket, I think of death, I think of mourning, I think of that place in my life. I get that. I know what it's like to be at a funeral and you looking like, how the heck we get here? And that's my grandmother, and you knew she was going to go before me. So now here he's talking about his wife. So that's my common experience.
Yeah.
I want you to recognize that, because once you are able to articulate that, you can hit it further. Because the common experience is the loss. It is the pain. We can relate to that. I don't need a resume on him to know I get that. All right, let me show you something else. Let me show you another one. This is a song, and I want to talk about how she does the song. She's telling a story in song. I really wanted to do 3, but I know we don't have time to do 3 today. Hold on, give me a second. One second. Okay. And I'm getting better at this share screen. Okay. Tell me if you can see the screen.
Yes, I can.
The incredible Jennifer Hudson.
Now I heard there was a secret chord that David played, and it pleased the Lord. But you don't really care for music, do ya? Well, it goes like this. For fifth, minor fall, and the major lift, the baffled king composes. It's how to shoot somebody who overthrew you. Sing it with me. And it's not a cry that you hear at night. It's not somebody who has seen the night. It's a chord and needs a broken heart.
it goes on a little longer for the sake of time. Now, before I ask your thoughts, this is why I wanted us to see this. This is going to be homework. I'm going to ask you to identify 3 things that you see intentionally that she is doing to convey this story. I don't even want you to answer it now, because I know we have 14 minutes left. I'm going to continue sharing about deliverables, and then I want you to bring that next week, because I want you to see the intentionality behind it. Yes, it's a, nice song, but it's some things that she's doing, and I want to see what you see. Is everybody clear about what I'm asking?
Mm-hmm.
And I also would like to know how you see that transferability. So when you point it out, I mean, I don't think any of us are necessarily trying to go win a Grammy. So we're not talking about how to be a better singer. We're pointing this out so you see how this will help you be a better communicator. So let's go back to deliverables. How to deliver. The very first thing that I learned at that speaking conference is start with your strong line. Your opening line is powerful. I want you to make sure you write that down. If you think about it, the best songs, it's the first line. At first I was afraid, then I was petrified. I mean, the great songs, you think about it, it's the first line. It's the very first line. That's intentional. That's intentional. I mean, you think about a book, right? I mean, how many times do you read a book and the first 2 chapters are bad and you just keep going through it? You might, but chances are you won't. So how you start matters. Why is this important? Because I'm not just giving you gimmicky things. When I get up, what I say first, I think matters. So let's say you're getting up to, especially if you're giving a oration or presentation, and maybe it's not I don't want to say it's hostile, but it's not totally welcoming. I don't know if I want to start with, well, I'm so glad to be here, and I just want to say thank you for having me. The preliminary stuff, you might want to start with something powerful, just like he did. I'm almost sure he probably started that way. And then maybe you can weave it to, I want to thank people for having me here. But you start with something that's, just like with the one gentleman, he started with the, best lesson he ever learned, 3rd grade dropout. Say something that makes me lean in. How you start matters. In fact, how you start matters so much that I think, this kind of goes back to Kirsten's question, maybe. One of the hardest things to do is to reestablish yourself once you have a bad first impression. And that bad first impression, now this is slightly different from we're in the middle of talking and I've flummed up what I wanted to say. I'm talking here where you just come out and it's wrong. And it happens that way. The music is wrong. Maybe you came out to, you're smiling wrong, you're dressed wrong. I mean, all of those things can make a huge difference. So how you start is going to matter. Be intentional about how you're starting, because that's going to let me know where we're going with this. Especially when you've been introduced a certain way. So let me go back to, I know I've mentioned this before. I know I keep talking about this one lady that I was on the one panel and she just went off on me. Well, one of the things that I think is important to bring up about that, one of my mentors was in the audience and he said, I think that introduction they gave you did a disservice. Yes, it was a very high level, all of this other stuff, but we were sitting in a place where we were talking about prison reentry work. And he was making the point that, now my story is definitely part of that, but that wasn't what was highlighted in the introduction. It almost seemed like somebody that was coming to talk above the crowd. So when I started speaking, I think that introduction informed them. So be cognizant of that too, how you're being introduced, how you're walking in. All of that's going to make a difference in how you want to open up. You know, if it's a friendly crowd, if it's something like that, you might be able to start off with introductions. You know, if you're in a courtroom, I mean, generally sometimes they start off yelling, "We're here because of him." And it's like, Dad, well, wait a minute, well, what did he do? And then the next 30 minutes, they're telling us about him. They don't even mention his name, him. It's like, wow. But you see, I mean, so start strong. Secondly, because I wrote these and I want to give them to you in order. Using analogies. It's so much to say here that I know I can't get it all out. Use analogies, stories, pictures. Now I know we've already talked about stories, but analogies is powerful. Parables. What was his analogy in the story? Who remembers? I think he gave a few, but what was one of the analogies? Now, everybody's clear on what I mean by an analogy, right? I mean, I know you know that.
Didn't he was talking about a brick when he was talking about his size?
No, you mean when he talked about his wife being a brick house. No, that was a nod to a song, actually. Close.
I tried.
You tried. But you're on the right track because it's mentioning an object. It starts with a B, the broom. Remember he said, be the broom. Be the broom. That's important. You knew it. You knew when he said be the broom what he meant. You knew what he meant because he set it up. Every great story has some level of analogy. I've never seen his wife, but I've seen a broom. I've never seen his father, but I've seen a broom. That's why pictures are important, because now we coalesce around something we commonly know. Pictures and parables, I always say this, not to be religious. If Jesus spoke in parables and it was some success to that, I think it's something to that. People like stories. People process stories easier. If you had to guess, I know you were on the whole time, Raheem, the whole speech. How long was that guy's speech that we listened to?
I don't know. I didn't look at the time.
I know you didn't. Guess. What do you estimate?
About 10 minutes.
You say
7,
10?
6
You
minutes.
say 7, 6. So it was about 10, but I think the reason why maybe you're thinking it's 7 or 6 is because he told it in a story. If he didn't tell stories, it would have seemed like 20 minutes.
You were totally engrossed.
Then that's what a story will do. A story, and I'm going to tell you also what a story does. A story makes you sound less preachy. This is important for you to know. And this is the next tip I want to give you. Again, what I learned from that conference. Give your best lines to your characters. He wasn't the hero of the story. See, good speakers make that mistake. They're the hero. Great speakers understand, don't be the hero. His hero was the 3rd grade dropout or graduate. His hero was his wife. You notice that? The best lines. So, you know, give your best lines to your characters. It makes you sound less preachy, and it also makes you sound more humble. Even if it was your line, give it to the character. My father always told me, my mentor always said, the best thing my grandmother ever shared with me. People like that better than I kind of figured this out when I was 10 years old. Give your best line to your characters, right? Okay, using analogies. We already talked about personal experience. Start with what you think is memorable. Keep going back to it. Keep going back to it. The 3rd grade dropout. Keep going back to it. Keep going back to it. Take people through a range of emotions. He certainly did that. We didn't laugh the whole time and we didn't cry the whole time. And I think, Raheem, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I know certainly with me when I first heard it, what struck me was it wasn't just the raw emotion, but it was the gift of this story that shifted in a way I wasn't expecting. That's what also made me more endeared to what was happening. I was expecting this inspiration. I mean, we were going one way, and to just see it, but that gives you an example. Some of the best movies are movies like that. You know, it's kind of the rags to riches, back to riches, or the riches to, you know.
Yeah. It's because it was unexpected, I think, because my heart just sank when she died. It was like, no, don't let that happen or something.
He'd also told a high, there was like a high point, and he went straight from that high point
to the low point, and he did it quick. And he did that made you want to hear more. I can guarantee you this, if I would have cut it off with where he said, say yes, you have one emotion, she said yes, or even right when the proposal was happening, you feel like, even if I would have cut it at that point, well, I'm sure he mentioned it because she said yes. But if I would have cut it off after the point where it says she found that lump in her throat, you probably would have gone back home to watch that again, because now I want to know how it is. That's the gift of a story. When I tell people my book come back swinging, the first line says, 3 years after I graduated from Harvard Law School, I was in federal prison. I mean, people want to know what, I mean, I'm not proud of the story, but what
happened? Yeah.
Did I hear that right?
Yeah.
So, but you see the point that I'm trying to make, right? I mean, the point of a good story, you're able to synthesize it in a way, when you tell it, people are like, oh my gosh. One thing that somebody told me, they said 2 reasons why people will listen to your story: because it's entertaining or it's informative. And people, even if it's not informative, even if it's entertaining, they'll stick with it. And so in that case, that entertaining, his story is entertaining, but not in a lifting of a happy way toward the end, but it's entertaining to say he created suspense. That's another thing. Can you create suspense in what your story is? Great speakers know how to create suspense. They create suspense by, sorry, you have to log off. Hey, sorry, yeah, I meant to tell people. Can we get about 5 more minutes before we log off?
Yeah.
Because I know I'm kind of, and I know people have to go. Because I know I'm dropping a lot here. What was the last thing I said with the?
Suspense.
Yes, creating the suspense is key. How do you do it? You can create suspense, and I'm gonna give you a tip. What Jennifer Hudson did was partly create suspense. I'm not gonna tell you how she did it, but you can watch it in the video. You can create suspense through body language. You can create suspense through the tone of your voice. You can create suspense by getting slower, talking lower. When people are in a courtroom and they're talking about an important point, they get slower. You notice that? Because they're telling you by their cadence, by their rhythm, and by how slow they're talking that you need to be listening. And that's creating the suspense. Can't tell you how many stories I've watched in a courtroom, and the lawyer, saying, I can't, when he walked in the room, can you believe what he did? When he walked in that room, can you believe what he did? And you're like, I don't know what he did, tell me. But so you see what we're doing, and this is the way I end this, because I know I told you a lot today, because what we're gonna shift to is now some core specific sessions. But I wanted to tell you some things that's going to help you regardless. Having a memorable message, knowing what you want to say, doing good discovery, making your message land, speaking clearly, taking people through a range of emotions, being self-deprecating. That was what he was. He laughed about his size. People like that. People are endeared when you don't take yourself as seriously. So all of those things are at play, and those are all things that are at play that are creating a spectacular presentation. It's not just the words. I'm hoping you get that from me. It's not just the sequence in the words that you're saying. It's all of these other things that's going to add to the story. So for next week, first assignment, please, let me put this in the chat. Oh, I didn't. You know what? You're going to have to I should have put the link in the chat. If you Google Jennifer Hudson sings Hallelujah, please watch that again. I really want you to identify 3 things that she's doing. Unbeknownst to me until I did that speaking conference, entertainers are sent to conferences like this to learn ways to enhance their message. So this isn't like something this isn't a crackpot theory. I watched it at 3 in the morning, like, oh, I think she's doing this. Like, there are things that they do intentionally. You may not think it because it's like, oh, she just sung that well. But I want you to see that. And next week, what we're going to shift to is interpersonal communication. How to ask probing questions, how to ask sharp questions, and how to use that for negotiating. Next week is negotiating week. I have not forgotten. I want to ask you to tell a story, but we haven't gotten there yet. Next week, we're going to get into negotiation and influencing, and how do we go from there. Questions, comments? I know this is a lot today.